This video is going to be about multiplying matrices. So let's try an example. Here I've got two matrices that I want to multiply. The first matrix, the one on the left, is a 2 by 3 matrix. It's got 2 rows and then 3 columns. So I'm going to write those dimensions above the matrix, 2 by 3. And the matrix itself is 1, -1, 4, and then 2, 0, 3. And I'm multiplying that by another matrix which has 3 rows and 2 columns. So that's a 3 by 2 matrix. And I'll write those dimensions there. That matrix is 2, 5, -2, 4, 1, and 3. Now, the first thing we have to do before we even begin multiplying is to make sure we're allowed to multiply these two matrices. Here's what I mean by that. There's a general rule that says that you can only multiply matrices if the number of columns in the first matrix is the same as the number of rows in the second matrix. So if we've written the dimensions down above the matrices, like I've written 2 by 3 and then 3 by 2, if you look at the two numbers in the middle, the 3 and the 3, as long as they're the same, then you can multiply these matrices. The dimensions of the final matrix, the product, are going to be the same as the numbers on the outside. In other words, it'll be the number of rows of the first matrix and the number of columns of the second matrix. Now the rows and columns, those two numbers, the 2 and the 2 in this case, don't have to be the same. I could multiply a 2 by 3 and a 3 by 7, and I would get a 2 by 7 matrix. In this example, I'm going to get a 2 by 2 matrix, though, because I've got a 2 by 3 times a 3 by 2. Okay, so we can multiply these two together. So let's see how the process works. I'm going to write a fairly large box to put the answer in, because it's going to be a complicated answer until we simplify it. So to find the element, which is the first row, first column of the final matrix, I'm going to take the first row of that first matrix and take the first column of the second matrix, and I'll multiply them together like this. I'll multiply the first element by the first element. That's 1 times 2, so that's a 2. Then I'm going to add what I get when I multiply the second element times the second element. That's a -1 times a -2, which is plus 2. Then I want to multiply the third element in that row by the third element in that column. That'll be 4 times 1, so that'll be 4. And I'll add these together later, but first I want to do all the multiplication. So now I want to find the element which is going to be what I put in row 1, column 2. So I'll take row 1 of my first matrix and column 2 of my second matrix and multiply those together. That means I've got 1 times 5, which is 5. Then -1 times 4, which is a -4, so that's 5 minus 4. And then 4 times 3, which is 12. So I've got plus 12. Going down to the second row, first column, I'll multiply the second row of the first matrix by the first column of the second matrix. That means I have 2 times 2, which is 4. 0 times -2 is just a 0. And 3 times 1 is 3. For the last element, the second row, second column, I'll multiply the second row of the first matrix by the second column of the second matrix. So 2 times 5 is 10. 0 times 4 is 0. And 3 times 3 is 9. And now I'll take what I've got here and just do the addition. So for my final matrix, I'm going to get, let's see, 2 plus 2 plus 4 is 8. And then 5 minus 4 is 1, plus 12 is 13. Going down to the second row, I have 4 plus 0 plus 3. That's a 7. And then 10 plus 0 plus 9 is 19. So my final matrix, which is 2 by 2, is 8, 13, 7, 19. Now, a couple of comments. First of all, the order in which you multiply is important. If we swapped these two matrices, we would get something totally different. First of all, we wouldn't get a 2 by 2 matrix, we'd get a 3 by 3 matrix. Second of all, even if these matrices were square, let's say they were both 2 by 2, there's still a very good possibility that when I swap them, I would get a totally different matrix. So the order in which you multiply is important. The second thing I want to say is just a comment. What you might want to try doing, whenever you're told you can't do something in math, you might want to try to do it and see what happens. So why don't you try multiplying a matrix that you shouldn't be able to? Why don't you try multiplying a 2 by 3 by, let's say, a 2 by 2? And you won't be able to do it, but it might be interesting to find out why you can't. So that might be a nice experiment. At any rate, that's basically the process we're doing when we multiply two matrices. The steps themselves are fairly simple. You have to remember the order you're going to do them in, and because there's a lot of steps, a lot of multiplication and addition, you have to be careful that you're not making any careless errors. But as long as you practice, you should be fine with these. Okay, so that's it. Take care. I'll see you next time.